Okay, so let's dive right into this. We're talking about the world of AI, where all this invisible code is making some very visible and, well, sometimes very flawed decisions about our lives. From the job you're trying to get to the medical care you need, these algorithms are kind of the new gatekeepers. This is what power looks like now. And yeah, it promises to be way more efficient, more accurate, and even fairer. But is it? What really happens when these incredibly powerful systems just don't work reliably? So, in this explainer, we're going to break down two big ways AI's judgment can be flawed. We'll look at the real human cost of these system failures, and then we're going to ask the really important question: can we actually build a better, fairer AI? All right, first up, let's just get a handle on how deep these automated systems have gotten into our society. It's pretty much everywhere. This right here is the big promise, right? The core idea is to take human error and our biases out of the picture. You create these objective, data-driven systems that are supposed to be more just than we are. But that whole promise, it really hinges on one thing: reliability. And believe me, this list is growing every single day. Who gets a job? Who gets a loan? Algorithms are the new gatekeepers to pretty much all economic opportunity. But when you concentrate that much power, it means that when the system fails, the consequences are just huge. So, let's look at the first major system failure. What happens when the code itself is biased? Okay, so here's our first major problem. And this isn't about AI having some kind of evil plan. It's much simpler. It's about AI learning from our world, and in the process, just amplifying the discrimination that's already out there. So the key takeaway here is that this is a reliability failure of fairness. The system is literally failing to apply its own logic consistently and equitably. It's not just a random glitch. It's a systemic problem that leads to automated discrimination. So how on earth did this happen? Well, the AI was trained on a decade of hiring data from the tech industry, a data set that was already, you guessed it, heavily male-dominated. The algorithm didn't invent sexism. It just learned our existing patterns perfectly and then put them on autopilot, reliably filtering out perfectly qualified women. And this is just a brilliant example of how a system can be biased without ever even seeing race. The algorithm's logic was that patients who cost more must be sicker. In this case, the algorithms aren't just looking at your driving record. Nope. They're using what we call proxy variables, things like your zip code, which is so often tied to race and wealth, to just continue these historical patterns of economic discrimination. So people are being charged more simply because of where they live. Now, what's really fascinating is that this kind of bias, this failure of fairness, isn't the only way AI judgment can be unreliable. There's this whole other kind of stranger problem: a complete failure of factuality, what people often call hallucinations. This is the point where AI doesn't just get the world wrong, it actively starts making things up. This is a fundamental reliability failure, where the system completely loses its grip on reality. Think about this. This wasn't based on bad data. When someone asked it to summarize a real lawsuit, ChatGPT just invented a detailed, libelous, and totally fictional story, even making up a fake case number. It wasn't just wrong, it was confidently and creatively wrong. And that led to the very first defamation lawsuit of its kind against OpenAI. And you know what? This isn't some big secret. The very companies that make these language models, they tell you right up front that their products are fundamentally unreliable. They put these warnings out there saying, hey, the information can be inaccurate, incomplete, or just plain wrong. They're basically admitting to a core system reliability failure right in the fine print. So yeah, these aren't just quirky bugs or some interesting technical problems. These system failures, failures of fairness, failures of factuality, they have profound real-world impacts on people's lives. And these harms are well documented. We're talking about people being unfairly denied jobs, loans, housing. We're talking about paying more for things you need or having your reputation trashed by something a machine just made up. These are real, life-altering consequences. And these failures, they don't hit everyone equally. Data brokers actually create these labels so that algorithms can specifically target vulnerable groups. So when you aim a flawed algorithm at people labeled struggling elders or credit crunch families, the impact of that unreliability becomes incredibly personal and incredibly damaging. Okay, so when you see all these significant problems, the big question becomes, can we actually build more reliable systems? Can we design algorithms to be part of the solution instead of just part of the problem? Now, I know this sounds a little counterintuitive, but it's a direct response to the failures we've just seen. Just telling an AI to ignore race doesn't work, because the algorithm just finds other ways to figure it out anyway. So, some researchers are arguing that you have to make the system race-conscious to actively correct for these real-world disparities. And here's a fantastic real-world example of that idea in action. California's Cal EnviroScreen algorithm was intentionally designed for equity. It doesn't ignore things like poverty and pollution levels. It actively uses them to pinpoint the communities that need investment the most. And it works. It drives billions of dollars to places that have been historically overlooked. It's an algorithm built from the ground up to be reliably fair. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. The technology is just a tool. We can build it to mindlessly copy all the flaws of our past, or we can consciously design it to help us build a more equitable future. That choice is completely up to us. And that really is the crucial question, isn't it? As we keep weaving these powerful but flawed systems into every corner of our lives, we have to decide. We have to decide not just what we want them to do, but what we want them to be. Reliably fair, reliably factual, and built for the kind of world we actually hope to create.